Hey Nerdpreneurs, Chris coming at you. I'm actually traveling right now, so if it sounds a little weird, it's because I'm recording from my hotel room in Durango, Colorado. Been out here masterminding. In this talk with Frank, we reference our interview with T, who makes fairy wings. This is interview episode number 9. If you want to listen to it before listening to this episode, I'll link it in the show notes. Now for today's Talkin' Nerdy.
Talking nerdy. We just talking nerdy. With all this talking nerdy. Oh, come on, you wanna talk nerdy?
Hey everybody, this is a Talking Nerdy episode, and today we're going to be doing a reflection on our interview with Creatures Who Craft, T. Tatiana. She was super helpful and just had a lot of great wisdom around material-based businesses, and she gave us some really good insights that Chris and I want to dive into. And if my voice sounds a little funny, it's because I'm a little sick, so I apologize for the nasaliness there, but we're going to go ahead and get things started. So
Yeah, T, by the way, makes fairy wings. If you
Yes.
don't remember which episode this was, she was the fairy wing person. And I actually didn't know much about going into this interview what she was actually doing. I know you had mentioned, I found this person who makes, I think, fairy wings. And I was like, what does that even mean? Makes fairy wings and sells
Right.
them. So I learned a lot of this stuff on the fly when it happened. I wouldn't say pleasantly surprised, but I was fairly surprised. Sorry. I was pleasantly surprised, is what I meant to say, not really knowing anything going in on how businessy we got on this call, on this interview with her. Yeah, I really enjoyed the fact that we didn't spend a ton of time on the wings and a lot of time on more the actual nitty gritty of building a materials business and also on like the ins and outs of really marketing. And I thought she had a lot of great insights that I think we didn't expect to get to from a business like fairy wings. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think totally that the way that we were able to zone in on the material-based business side of things was super helpful. And I think that was something that we didn't get to a lot in our first 12 episodes. So I was really glad that we were able to do that with her. And on that note, just the sheer fact that she really built this up over COVID and the lockdown and the supply chain logistic issues that everyone experienced around that time and still kind of is. I think that was a really good perspective for folks. And the fact that, I mean, just a testament to, her navigating that. Anybody that's a new business, owner starting up a business and they have to navigate something like that with material shortages, that's a huge hurdle. And she overcame that from the sound of things, and her business seems to be doing quite well still from what I've seen.
Yeah, and I also really liked that when we talked about doing this, it was another example. I really thought what I liked was she was another example of a person who just did something well, and others noticed that because it was done well, that they could actually pay her for it, or like, ask, could you sell these, or do you sell these? You should really do that. What's funny is that one thing that I noticed was she said, there was like a step into being professional for her, where like when she saw other people wearing her wings on TikTok or the first few people she had sold to and realized like, this might actually be kind of cool and popular. People might actually talk about this and wear it and share it with their followings. She's like, I got to make these better. Like she upped her quality, and I think that's that competitive nature that comes from entrepreneurship that you just kind of have to have. You have to want to do something a little better than what other people in the industry might be doing, so you stand out and give somebody a higher quality thing. And we even talked about it, leveling up, right? Are you ready to level up yourself and leveling up your quality when you step into the arena of selling something to other people?
Yeah, and on that note, it was a very much a moment for her when she wanted to, with this level up mentality, she had to invest. She had to invest in herself, and I thought that was really useful tying back to what we said earlier about the material components side. She had to invest in software and hardware, social media, education, the packaging supplies, the supplies for her product. And so she knew that, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I need to invest. And it wasn't like she was not coming from a place with a lot of money. She was clearly someone who was working her tail off in a day job at for a candle company, and also her kickboxing gig. And then now she's doing this.
Hmm. Well, I didn't. The way I saw it was like it sounds to me like she just enjoys being productive. Like there are certain people that love having a full day and has that energy and are excited about continuing to grow or continuing to make something. I got the sense that maybe she doesn't watch a lot of TV. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Or
right.
do a lot of these other things. Like we even talked about this for a while. And one of my favorite discussions we've ever had on the show was just about social media and the toxic nature, and maybe we get into that at some point. But
Yeah.
the ability of something like TikTok to suck away time in a vacuum and not realize where it's going is something that I got the sense she didn't suffer from very often. Like she uses social media for her business to build something, yes, but it was not something that she was beholden to or suffering from in terms of like, oh man, where's my day going? She still had a lot going on. And I think it was not because of just, oh, I want to make money, but probably because she wanted to have an above average lifestyle, or she wants to have more in her life and be more than 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 average, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a good takeaway for our listeners right there, that if you want to succeed, you really have to prioritize, you have to sacrifice. Like you're saying, she's, and it's not that she's oblivious. She's clearly not oblivious to the time suck of social media. I mean, she pointed it out. So it's not that, and it's not that she's just not interested. She knows that it's a hurdle, and so she avoids it. She actively avoids it. And that is a big thing for everybody, to recognize our pitfalls, recognize our weaknesses, or just the things that are trying to pull us from the path that we're trying to walk, and avoid them or put boundaries around them. And for anyone who's starting their own venture, any nerdpreneurs out there, you got to recognize those things. What are the things that are going to hinder me or hurt me and my journey? And so she did, and then
What are
she
some things
focused on
that
those things.
I'm curious, what are some things that you maybe have given up in your pursuit of bigger and better life or bigger and better goals? Because, I know
Hmm.
there are things in my life I can list to be like, well, I've kind of really I'm not super caught up on Marvel. Like I kind of cut out watching every Marvel movie for the last 10 years. And I don't want to say it's just because the movies are the same every single time, but it's also just I think there was less of a need to know what was going on in that universe all the time because I had other things in my universe that I was excited about.
Well, I will take the other side of that Marvel conversation, which is Marvel is my guilty pleasure nowadays. Like, if a Marvel movie comes out, Karen and I, we're gonna line up. We're gonna go out and we're gonna see it. And if it's not with Karen, then it's with somebody else that I will go
Mhm.
see that movie. But for me, the things I avoid actually are a lot of crappy TV. And I say crappy, and that's highly subjective, I know. But for me, it's things that I can see the behind the scenes of, or things that don't pull me into the immersion. I avoid a lot of TV like that unless it's old Star Trek. The old Star Trek is very much you very much sometimes the production value is not there, but I still get into it. And
I like having old Star Trek on while doing other things, like
yeah,
for example, working out. I actually worked out, and I think I got into like I blame DS9 honestly for me getting in shape because it's a lot of seasons, and it's just engaging enough that I was like, you know what? If I work out right now, I get to work DS9. It was kind of like there's this. It's a good enough show that I got excited about it, but I only allowed myself to watch it while I was working out or lifting weights or doing something like that. Which I'm curious, like, how do you set those boundaries, or maybe do you pair things like that to your goals to get you moving forward with them?
Oh, that's another good question. I don't actually do too many things at the same time. Like watching TV and working out would be really hard for me, because I do a very good job of doing one thing at a time. And that's one of the reasons I don't waste my time on shitty TVs, because if I'm watching TV, that's like all I'm doing. So I don't want to waste my time doing that. But as far as like other things that I don't waste my time on, like very similarly to what we were talking about with tea, is TikTok. I tried out TikTok for a little bit, and when I realized how powerful it was, I thought, "You know what? I don't really." I mean, like 45 minutes flew by just being on my phone, and I really don't want that to happen regularly. So, I axed it. I axed it. And then I also, I'm hardly on Instagram, hardly. I mean, I do Twitter now, but that's not nearly as much of a time sink. It can be, but it's not really. But what about you? Like, what are your things that you have to avoid? I feel like I've never really heard much along those lines from you.
There's what are the things I need to avoid? I mean, I can get, like there aren't a lot of things anymore. I used to be very into TV. I've probably watched a ton of movies and a ton of immersive TV for sure. I don't watch as much anymore, and part of it is I think I got just so burned out on TV shows and I started to like be able to tell what was going to happen because I'd seen so many tropes or so many ways in which it is. It doesn't mean I can't get into a TV show, but I feel like the quality has to be so good now that if it's not up to that standard, I'm kind of like, well, what's the point of watching this, right? I'm not super engaged. I have to watch getting on my phone and like scrolling through Instagram. Instagram's probably my most addictive of the social medias, but it's also what I use for building and promoting and understanding what is going on in the universes that I inhabit online. So there is some return on that.
Sorry, I just wanted to jump in and say the TV thing that you said about the quality, the production value. That's exactly how I feel. But I think you explained a little bit better than me.
Yeah, well, I have to be very careful with like I think actually just hanging, I mean, it sounds weird, but like hanging out with friends. And, it's very easy for me to take a day and be, especially where there's football, for example, it's like a Sunday and I'll just like watch all the football games or I'll spend like a long time hanging out with my friends. Like I'll go out at 7 for dinner, but then I'm like, oh, wow, it's like 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. And, I'm just getting home then. And then it might kill my morning. It might make me sleep in. And so that it's more the rollover of those experiences of living, which I don't regret having. Often I want to have those types of experiences. Spending time with friends is probably one of the best ways you can spend your time. However, when it comes down to it, if you're also trying to launch a business and create music and also, have these goals and fitness and all these other things, they don't always align, who you're spending time with and when you're spending time with them. And it's important to kind of, in some ways, intentionally schedule them. And sometimes of the year, I actually want to cut those back and spend less time in those situations where once I have a couple of drinks or once I get partying, it's hard to stop or it's hard to stay on task with where my overall goals are.
Yeah, as far as who you spend your time with, super, super big point I just want to talk about for a quick second, which is Chris, if you ever feel like you're spending too much time with other people, do what I did and move to a different city where you hardly know anybody.
Oh, I have absolutely done that multiple times in my life, but
Well,
I
there you
want to
go.
stay in Vancouver. I love Vancouver. So at this
Vancouver's
point,
really
now
nice.
it's more about like, all right, I got to make this work.
Yeah, I definitely think that having those experiences are great, but it's more so to the point that you touched on, which is spending time with people that really do further and promote you in the way that you want to grow.
Support
Um,
your goals. Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I mean, you said it in another one of the episodes, one of the other talking nerdies we did, but the amount of growth that people do is so much dependent on the books they read and the people they spend their time with, and that stuck with me when you said that because I have heard that before, but it's very true that the amount of time you spend with people, it helps if those people are really helping you. And that's one of the things I appreciate about spending time with you and the things that we work on together is that we're both like-minded in wanting to push the needle forward on our various topics and ventures. So,
Hmm.
and that's one of the things, bringing it back to T and Creatures Who Craft, T very much, she clearly knows what it is she's doing, what she plans to do with her time.
It sounds like she's very intentional with it. I thought you were going to say it clearly sounds like she knows what she's doing in her business because while she definitely had an idea of like, yes, she does know what she's doing, but I also feel like she's a great example, and I think she would probably say this is that she figured it out and made a lot of mistakes and learned the hard way on a few things, which is why she can now give that wisdom away to other people because she didn't really know what she was doing stepping into this unknown thing being an entrepreneur. Like she didn't come from a place of like, oh, I'm a designer so I can make logos or I know how to put up content and make something that's captivating or build an like she even admits she didn't really know any of that stuff before starting. She just had people around her say, oh, cool fairy wings, do you sell those? And after a couple of times hearing that, she just said, "Yes, I do. Let me figure out how to do this," and realized there was an opportunity. Sometimes the universe or whatever it is, we create these opportunities and it says, "Hey, do you want to pursue this? Do you want to step into this arena?" And it's your choice to say, "I'm going to jump over and figure it out," because you don't need to know every single little thing about how it's going to happen or how you're going to get to the next level of success. You just have to be willing to step out there and make mistakes and risk being seen, risk being a failure, and then learning from it and growing.
Yeah. And also to the point of she may not have known a lot of these things before. And I think that she was very humble in the way that she talked about kind of stumbling into these things and learning the hard way. And I always appreciate that whenever our guests are just so open with, "Oh, I didn't know what the heck I was doing." I love that because that is the story that I want to hear. That's the reality I like to hear. Because when someone's just like perfectly successful, it's kind of frustrating for me. Like, why am I not like?
Well, it's not
But
real either, right? Like it's
yeah,
just success is it's like that meme. It's always like, success, what people think success is, and it's like a graph of a straight line. And then what success actually is just this squiggly line that goes all
yeah,
over
roller
itself and turns
coaster.
into
Yeah,
a total mess and then eventually reaches success. Because I really believe that's kind of what it is. There's another, I love using visuals in a auditory podcast. So
yeah, right.
let me just explain my other visual. But there's this little graphic that I've seen where there's a circle, right? And it says, comfort zone inside the circle. And then outside the circle, in this little dot off to the side, outside of it, it says where the magic happens.
Yeah, I've seen a similar graphic, but it says success is like out there.
Hmm.
But so what I wanted to say was on that point, of our comfort zones and whatnot, she still did have expertise in relevant areas. I mean, and for her, hers was in modeling. That's where a lot of the tie-in comes from. Like she doesn't have a background in marketing. She doesn't have a background in social media or making physical. Actually, she does have a background in making physical products because of the candle business that she works at.
Hmm.
But she used those things that you may not think, oh, if you're thinking, I want to start something and you have her skill set, you're not going to think, oh, fairy wings, that seems like a shoe in. She found ways to make those skills that she had and her expertise apply. And she does it in such an elegant way, I think, that she doesn't need to, in her case, she doesn't need to create a lot of content. And we'll talk about that here in a second. She doesn't need to create a lot of content. The content she does post is of a really high caliber that I
Hmm.
think it goes well on Instagram, because that's one of the things that Instagram was initially big on, which was those really quality pictures or making it look like at least people had high quality pictures and they were pro photographers.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's really about um, authenticity now, and we get into this too. Is that the content that she was that the idea of being a content creator and using that as a marketing tool, right? Like I don't think she wants to be an influencer. You know what I'm saying? I
Right.
think she wants to sell more wings. And
Mhm.
so it's really about like, what do I need to do? So she makes content in order to have this offer. And I think that's really important because there's this whole influencer economy. And I was listening to someone talk about this earlier today. So I'm sort of borrowing this. But, when you're starting off a business, I don't think you should start with like, how do I build up a business or how do I build up an influencer base and then I'll market something. It's like, no, start with your offer. Like start with something you're selling, which is what she did. Like she started with this thing called fairy wings that she knew she wanted to sell, and then from there you craft the content and things around how do you get people to buy that thing, which in some ways I think is very simple. When you have like a physical product to sell, it's like, okay, yes, that's awesome, I know what I want to offer, I know what I want to charge for it, and now I just have to like get people to see it and the word out and explain the transformation that it brings to them. Whereas with stuff like what we do, it's a little bit different because we're creating content and building out an audience and everything, but like what's the offer that we want to bring people into, like the board of nerds, right? And the chance to have more access and more content and extra things. And so I think it's important if you're starting a business, whether it be a nerdpreneur business or any other type of business, that you figure out what's your offer going to be before you start saying, I want to be an influencer. So many people I think want to be influencers nowadays and without having an offer.
That's such a good point. I mean, one little side note about everyone wants to be an influencer. I mean, we even see this in the younger generation. I mean, I just saw an old kind of acquaintance of mine from back in my film days. He had a kid a long time ago. Well, a long time ago. Okay. He had a kid like 6 or 8 years ago or something like that. And the kid is now old enough to want to be an influencer. And so they started a YouTube channel. So this acquaintance of mine, he's very skilled in making video from, the directing side to the editing side. So
Hmm.
he's helping his son make content to put on YouTube for a gaming channel. And the kid is clearly very excited about this. And to me, it's like, how is it that we promote this in our culture and kids, they want to be influencers too? So that is really surprising to me. And it's kind of hard for me to really come to terms with that that's really what we promote. People would rather be influencers than go to the moon per se.
Yeah. Well, I think we always wanted to be popular. We always wanted to be famous, right? It's just more possible now than any other time in history to be able to do that. And there's an encouragement towards, and I think that's part of what we talked about and dug into in this social media discussion we had on the episode around the toxic nature and addictive nature of it is a lot of people do start off just being like, well, maybe I'll see if I can sell some, or maybe I can just post some content. But then they get into that oh wow, that really blew up. Now I got 1,000 or 100,000 people watch that reel. That's a lot of people. That's crazy. Am I going to get famous if I keep doing this? And there it becomes this recognition of fame. Now, when I was a kid, yeah, I wanted to be a rock star, or I wanted to be, a movie star. I was an actor, so I
Sure.
wanted to be a movie star, right? I wanted to do all those types of things without having ever done a movie or acted on film or known anything about it. When I realized how awful that actually is in so many ways. I'm like, actually, you know what? I don't want to do that anymore. But I, it's not saying it's bad for everyone. I just didn't like. I love acting on theater. I do not like acting on film. But I will say that there's a lot of that naivete you get when a kid wants to be that. So I don't think it's a bad thing to like want to be an influencer when you're a kid. It's just like those are now the new movie stars. Those are the new famous stars. But the idea of using an app that is going to cash in on that and make you like want to be on that app all the time in order to claim that and make you believe that it's totally possible. At least we all knew, like, hey, if you're going to be a singer, you have to be good. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you actually have to be good. And if you want to be an actor, you actually have to be really good and you have to get on stage and you have to do, like, you have to do something in the past. Whereas I think a lot of people with influencer, it's like you have to use this app and you have to find ways to be crazy or get attention. And that's a different type of economy. That's a very different way of being. How do you get attention? And it's, I don't know. I mean, time will tell whether or not that's a healthy way to raise kids. I don't
Yeah.
know that that is always the healthiest focus that a child could have is how do I get more attention? How do I get more attention? How do I get more attention? I just don't know that that necessarily creates happiness or that it necessarily creates a functional human long term. It's different than people who want to make money and want to get attention so that they can live their dream running a business as a nerdpreneur, you
Yeah,
know?
I think that's a good point. I mean, and of course, we're two guys without kids, so I'm not gonna go too deep into the whole, like, what we think parenting should be. But I brought that up primarily just to highlight the fact that, our culture emphasizes influencers. Because your question was about, what we think how influencing or creating an influencer, brand and following, we often put that first before we put the product forward. And I think if we're talking about physical products here, that's totally applicable. Now, if we're talking about, the product or service of entertainment or like making reels or something, and that is your product, then that's a little bit different, of course. But as far as like in T's situation, where we've got physical material product, totally agree that focusing on that physical product first and then making your content, if you're going to emphasize that, revolve around that. I mean, we saw that with Vic. We saw that with Aram, whether it was Mimic Books or Tarantulas, they focused on their product and then they found that the fun, the joy of making content out of that really took off and really helped them succeed online.
Yeah. And a lot of people put into the cart before their horse. So like, how do I get the attention before they ever even have something to sell or
So,
anything necessarily of value? So, yeah, find some place to contribute and add value that you can actually sell. Like craft your offer first. Speaking of offers, there's a quote that says, "Life is a one-time offer. Use it well." This quote inspires us to question our lives and what we're doing with it. I know I want to make sure I'm doing the things that are meaningful and make me happy. That's why Frank and I started Nerdpreneur, to follow our nerdy passion and inspire our listeners to do the same. Pursuing a business you're passionate about feels great, but living off that business is something else entirely. There are skills to learn, strategies to implement, and tools to utilize to grow a nerdy business faster. And we want to discover them and share them with you so you can do it too. We don't run ads on this podcast, and we are supported fully by our
awesome Nerdpreneur board.
Board members get extended interviews and a peek behind the scenes of how we create and grow the pod. If you want to support us in this nerdy business adventure, go to patreon.com/nerdpreneur and sign up to the board. Now back to our reflections on T, who makes fairy wings. And I also think, she was so willing to learn and grow and do those things, and that attitude when you step into something new is so important. I mean, if you're wanting to be an entrepreneur, if you wanted to be someone who's willing to work for themselves and not have a boss, you have to be willing to suck at things or be not very good at them for a little bit, but also be ready to learn and excited about learning. Because when you make a mistake, it's really like how you interpret that is important. Like you can interpret a mistake, like when we talked about the shipping costs changing on Amazon. I asked, like, did you learn that the hard way? Because I know she probably did. That's how she knows that lesson. So you can look at those mistakes you make as an entrepreneur or as a human as like, oh, I suck and I'm not worthy of being there. Or you can interpret it as another lesson in the pursuit of success. And how you look at that is actually going to change your ability to move past it. One of the things I noticed is that she seemed to have a really strong sense of self, and you don't always see that in people, right? She was very confident and expected that, like, I will get past these challenges, whatever they are, to the point of success. And I think that that's just a natural entrepreneurship attitude you have to have in order to be able to succeed, not just in nerdpreneur businesses, but really in anything. I think you just have to be willing to learn and grow past and make those failures part of your success.
Yeah, I do think that her strong sense of self, like you mentioned, really showed in so many things. I mean, she's an experienced model, so she's familiar with looking confident and looking the part in many different ways. And I totally believe that she is naturally actually quite confident and good at what she sets her mind on. And the other thing was about her strong sense of self also leads to this sense of self-care. And I think now is a good time for us to talk a bit about that for her social media strategy. And that, and I mean, we do talk about this quite a bit, I think. So maybe we don't need to go too deep into it. But the idea of just how much people emphasize on social media and they let it drive them crazy. And she was making the great point of, you know what? If you are feeling crazy about it, if it's making you anxious, just take a break. Just let people know. And as a follower of hers, I've noticed that she does that. She'll do it, once every few months. She'll be like, hey, like things are getting crazy, like with making fairy wings, or my personal life's a bit busy right now, so I'm going to stay off social media for a bit. And then she tells people when she's back, and she gives them this like breakdown of how things have been. And I believe that she's got a lot of really invested people in her story, which is it's very, what's the word where I want to say humble, but it's not that. It's very much like she's very on the surface with people, not on the surface. She's very open.
Real.
Yeah, there you go.
Authentic.
Thank you.
Authentic. Yeah, because well, we talked a lot about authenticity as a marketing thing too, right? Because I don't like to say it's like marketing, because then it makes it sound like it's
fake.
You're faking it. But that's the whole idea, is that when it's authentic, it's effective. Marketing is effective when it's authentic. You can't be like, oh, how do we make our marketing authentic? Like, no, it has to be authentic and then use it as marketing. It's like there's a way in which to do that. And yeah, she keeps it very real. And I think people realize that. And also, a lot of people want to buy because they want to buy from her. because they could, order fairy rings off of various places, but they want to buy from her. They like her. And I think that's a reminder that when you put your authenticity out there and do a good job, you can't just put it out there and like expect anything, but you have to do a good job. You have to deliver. She has great customer service, all those other things that she learned and the practicalities of it. But if you can remain authentic and deliver on what your value is to your customers, what's amazing is that there will be loyal customers. They'll come back and they'll want to buy from you. They'll tell other people about it. And there is a real power in remaining authentic because nobody else can do that.
Yes, I totally agree. I think that the way that people really wanted to support her was super noticeable for her. And mentioning that point about butterfly wings, she really in the beginning did not want to make butterfly wings for people because she felt like, oh, like I'm not going to do something as simple as that. But it was realizing that, man, these people really want to support her, so she's going to do it, and recognizing that there's might even be a demand for something like that, and maybe
Mhm.
offering a more butterfly set of wings.
Well, don't like we hear this a lot from nerdpreneurs too, is that you got to listen to your customers, right? Like if you might have an idea of what they
Yeah.
want, but that may not be at all what they want. So you, in many ways, might enjoy making fairy wings, but really your market wants butterfly wings, and the process is a matter of labeling and at least different shapes. So, like, if you're going to make a lot more money making butterfly wings, and you're going to have happier customers who tell people about it, then make the butterfly wings. You know what I mean? Like, listen to your customer. And again, those are things that I think that's just a lesson as you grow, and something we need to do more of, I think, too, is get more interaction with our clients. And what those clients are, those listeners, those people who are listening to us right now and telling us through emailing nerds@nerdpreneurpodcast.com, or tagging us in posts, or sending us an IG message on, at NerdpreneurPod about things they like, didn't like, or if you get really, getting feedback. We want to do some AMAs, like sending questions too, right? Like, what are some questions we can do?
That's actually something that so I'm reading the book by the McElroy brothers, Everybody Has a Podcast Except You, and one of the points that they hit on in one chapter was just so much about engage with your audience, let them be a part of your conversations, and
Mhm.
create an email address that they can email, like you said, nerds@nerdpreneurpodcast.com. Let them at you on social media. Let them, you can't stop them, but like when they at you, make sure that you're taking that into account, because
Tweet us.
there is that aspect of when people feel that connection. And I will give one shout out
Use the
right now.
hashtag nerdpreneur. Like, if people post about
Yeah.
hashtag nerdpreneur, I think that should be one, our hashtag, and also that we can start pulling in questions that you have, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, if you tweet, for example, a question about how do I start this business, or any question, honestly, I'm willing to almost answer any question about anything, or try to anyways, but it would be great for that to be like a hashtag nerdpreneur, and then we get more feedback, very similar to the way I don't know if you listen to Dan Savage's podcast, but he
Mm-mm.
gets all sorts, used to, he got off Twitter, but like a lot of people would tweet out questions or comments based on the episodes that he did with the Savage Love hashtag. And it's all relationship advice. So people always had tons of opinion. And we give tons of business advice and other types of advice and life advice and things. So some people might disagree with us. If you wanna create a comment or add to something or do something else along those lines, hashtag nerdpreneur it on whatever social media platform. We'll be able to find it and we'll read it out.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye out for it for sure. I mean, I'm so getting into Twitter right now. It's a lot of fun.
Oh man,
It's dangerous.
it's dangerous. Watch out if you become the. I'll see. We'll have to measure whether or not there's a marked change in your level of anger over the course of the next year in
Yeah,
Twitter. I'm curious
fortunately,
to see if there's a long-term
fortunately, the
effect.
algorithm has learned what I like to pay attention to, so it doesn't show me a lot of that like hateful stuff. If I go
Yeah.
looking down different trends, then I'll find it.
Well,
But
I think that's another point I just like to bring out, is like, how do you make your algorithm work for you? A lot.
mm,
I think a lot of people seem to talk about the algorithm like they're a victim of it, like they don't know what's happening. And I think we're smarter than that. If you're smart, you can make the algorithm work for you, which is how you make social media work for you. If you can manage your focus and manage what is good and bad for you or makes you feel good or feel bad, then you get that algorithm tuned in for you so that when you get on social media, it's a very efficient practice.
Yeah, T actually brought that up. She even made the point of, when she follows people, she's very intentional about who she stays as a follower of, because, that stuff is going to influence her unconsciously, subconsciously. It's going to influence the way she acts in her days and even the products that she makes. I totally agree. I mean, for me, when TikTok was probably the best example because that was the most recent platform I started using a while ago. Don't anymore, obviously, but that platform, I was able to choose who I followed so I would know to tell the algorithm what I want to see. And then all of its suggestions would be in those same veins. And whenever it deviated from that, um, either I just like didn't interact with it at all, no liking, no commenting, no nothing, or I started following them if it was something that was actually worthwhile. So yeah, I agree. I mean, how do you think that what is a way that you think we should tailor the content that we take in, consume?
I just for me, it's mainly about like if I don't like something, specifically my ad situation. Like if I get an ad about balding medication, I get rid of it because I don't want that energy anywhere in my life. Do you know what I mean? So
And why do you not want that balding medication energy in your life, Chris?
I got a wonderful set of hair, man.
Oh, okay. All right. See, yeah.
One you can say one thing about the podcast. We got great hair.
Our
I
hair is
think
pretty good.
yeah, it's a thing. So all I'm saying is that if I see an ad that is just not in alignment with me or I don't like it, I consciously go in and say, hide this ad. Do not show me this. Why? And they ask you, like, why
Yeah.
is it? And I say, it's because it's not relevant for me. I don't want to get ads like that. And I've done that with a number of ads. Balding was just the one that came up, but it could be just as many other products that I happen to get referred to me that I just don't think are relevant to me. And as I do that, that actually tailors what you get. So I often do buy things off of, say, Instagram ads or things like that, but that's because I really have that thing working for me. I like that it funnels cool stuff to me that I might actually like. I don't want it to be funneling me stuff that doesn't seem relevant or add value to my life. So when I see an ad that I don't like, I actually consciously get rid of it so that they know. And I think a lot of people try to like fight it and like, oh, this thing sucks, I'm just not even going to go on it. You can actually tailor that thing pretty well so that you're only getting funneled really good products that you actually might want to buy. And of course, that just means you have to be careful with when and what you want to buy and budgeting and all that kind of thing. But I'd rather have that thing be a positive. I'd rather have the ability to control that aspect of it versus just be lumped in with all the other, 30 somethings who might be losing their hair.
Yeah, I think it's a good lesson in general to tailor things the way you want them. Because I mean, the algorithm is not totally unknown. We do have a pretty good idea of how it works. So if you tailor it, you can help tell the algorithm what it is you want. And I think that's the intention. I think that's how the algorithm should be, the relationship we should have with the algorithms, instead of just like, oh no, it sent me this stuff. It's like, no, 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 no. Like, realize that you actually have the power in your hands to tell the algorithm what you want.
Yeah.
And of course, we say the algorithm in like quotation marks.
Spooky
Yeah,
terms.
right.
It's like, watch out for the algorithm, right?
I know. I think the first big algorithm. Oh, actually, on that, I wonder, what do you think the first big algorithm was? What do you think? I have a thought, but
I have no idea what you mean by that, but like a
like
search
what
engine, probably.
brand? Yeah,
Like probably like what, Yahoo or something, or AOL. I don't know.
yeah, maybe. I was gonna say like Google was the big one. I don't know if they probably weren't the first one, but
No, Google was like way down the list of search engines. Yahoo was valued at like the number one for a while, and then Google came out, and it was just so much better and simpler, and like scraped the internet. What it did well was exactly what it does now, which is scrape data and organize it in an effective way. And that is basically what they do with everything now in terms of what you do on your phone, what you do in terms of keystrokes, so they know everything that happens, right? Like, and they
Yeah.
use that to tailor it down into ad revenue or into organized information. So there's that's their business model, and Google was the best at it, right?
Yeah, I agree.
I did like the phrase brain heroin. I don't know if I'm the one who came up with it, but I did enjoy it. It was in reference to the social media that we talked about.
Yeah, brain heroin was kind of a random drop. I do think that that is a very appropriate way of looking at social media. I mean, comparing things to drugs that are, generally addictive. We talked about Magic the Gathering. Another one that a friend recently brought up was Warhammer. They said like, well, if Magic the Gathering is like crack, then Warhammer's like expensive heroin. And then it made me wonder, wait a minute, what's the difference between those two? I clearly don't know a
The
lot about
price, I
drugs.
guess.
And
um,
I thought they were very similar.
yeah, well, it's definitely probably well, it's probably the price anyway, because I know Warhammer 40K is a fairly costly hobby.
Oh yeah.
I used to play Warhammer 40K when I was in high school,
Oh
but
my gosh, I don't think I knew that.
yeah, no, that was one of my deep nerdy dungeon dives that I did with Eldar and orcs. Because if you
Ah,
played and the
mhm.
version I played, you played orcs because you love them. They were the worst. They were just awful. You couldn't win, but they were so much fun to paint. I actually just enjoyed painting the models more than ever playing the game. Because to me, Warhammer 40K and Warhammer were kind of glorified Risk. I didn't particularly find it interesting as a game, and there were so many rules, at least at the time. Maybe it's been streamlined since then. I just didn't really like it. But I love the modeling, and when I was home over the holidays, I actually did. My parents even brought out the old Games Workshop case that had all my old Eldar army in it and everything in there, and I got to take it out and look at all the paint jobs that I did, which was really kind of cool to be like, oh wow, yeah, I did do these things a long
Going
time
down memory
ago.
lane. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's always fun whenever you go back home. Um, I did wanna talk about something before we kinda wrap up this
Hmm.
discussion. One of the things that T talked about that felt so appropriate and so just a beautiful bow on the conversation. And whenever we have these kind of talks with our guests, it just makes me so happy and have faith in humanity that what really motivates her is the life-changing customer experiences that she hears and the stories that she gets through social media or through her like customer service side of her business that she manages. Whenever she sees, ultimately, she sees the value and the positive impact that the value she's providing has for people. And
Hmm.
I love that because when that is our motivator, I think that that is how we make the world a better place as individuals. Is that when we can provide value with something that we are experienced and that we have our expertise in, we provide that value. Other people benefit from that value, and then it changes their life really positive way. That is what I feel like the world marketplace should be. Not
Hmm.
this like, I won't go on a rant, but not a lot of what it is nowadays.
I think that ethical capitalism is the future instead of socialism. I think there's a lot of people who believe that socialism is inherently ethical. It's not, which is the problem with it. But
Mm,
I believe that ethics on the capitalism side, and the reason why a lot of capitalism, a lot of people are anti capitalism nowadays, is because they don't really understand it. And two, they also uh, mandate it as an immoral philosophy inherently.
mhm.
Like the idea that you're selfishly trying to make money off the backs of workers or other people, or exploiting or charging more than what the product is worth, like all of that in some way, I think there are people who believe that's ethically wrong, and I think that that's a mistake to believe that.
Whoa.
I also believe that if you are thinking that way, um, they're separate things. Ethics on their own are aligned to values. And if you have ethical capitalists, then you have the ability to create an immense amount of positive impact in the world. There's a reason why when we go to the store and I buy a coffee, I guess you don't buy a coffee at a store. When I go to a coffee shop and I buy a coffee, they say thank you, and I say thank you as well. I'm spending the money there, and they win. And then when I get my coffee, I win. that's a win-win situation, and that's what always fosters the growth. That's
Hold
what
on.
fosters
We s-
everything.
we need to back up though, because I think a point you were saying, it sounded like you were saying that ethical capitalism
Mhm.
is where people profit, regardless of how it impacts others, upstream or downstream.
No, that's not what I was saying. What I
Oh,
was
okay.
saying is that I think a lot of people who are socialists believe that's what capitalism is. But in
Mm,
fact, capitalism is not that. It only really works with ethical doctrines behind it. And this goes back to the original philosopher of capitalism, Adam Smith. He wrote The Wealth of no, was it The Wealth of Nations? Yeah, The Wealth of
mhm,
Nations is Adam Smith, and he talks about the invisible hand that guides capitalism to overall better things, which is
mhm.
a little woo-woo for people who are in the world and suffering. And I get why people do that. But he has a whole other philosophical treatise based on morality that no one ever read. And no one ever talks about Adam Smith's moral philosophies that are supposed to go along with his capitalism. And that invisible hand is not just guided by woo woo, it's guided by the individuals who follow moral, ethical nature and, yes, pursues what's good for them, but also considers what is also good for the greater and everyone else outside of it. There is impact to the actions we take. And he actually did understand that, but nobody talks about that. So I'm not talking about unbridled capitalism. I do believe that there's some level of regulations and things, of course, that need to be in place to manage monopolies or other problems like that. Of course, we want regulations. However, we also need to have that freedom to go out there and give ethical people the chance to provide value at a reasonable price, make their own living out of it, create the excitement and the wealth of their own in their life for themselves and their family. It's really the only fair way and good way of doing it.
Yeah, and it allows those people who start those businesses to feel like they're providing meaning not only for themselves but for others. And that I think is where we get the that deep sense of satisfaction and meaning when we actually can see that we help others. Which I
Yeah.
think that's ultimately what T is saying, and ultimately what we see in a lot of other nerdpreneurs is they love that satisfaction of helping others.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to get back to was just your point of the fact that she was motivated not by, oh, I'm making an extra few dollars, right? It's because she really loves providing something for her people. She's excited about the transformation that they experience buying and experiencing going through and having her fairy wings and the joy that brings to her is yes, she makes some extra money, but also she does get to see the impact and the customers love it. She likes the 5-star reviews, right? And of course, that's a reflection of her great customer service and the way she's interacting with people. So, all I'm saying is that, there's a lot of people who want to throw capitalism under the rug and say, oh, everything is unethical about it. Ethics and capitalism are two different things. So it's important to be ethical and be a capitalist. If you're going to be a capitalist, you should be ethical.
Whew, that is a that is I oof. I don't know if I can jump into that conversation right there. That
That's
is
all
that
right.
is a big one.
It is. We can
Um,
leave that one for a whole other topic
we'll leave it
and
for another
let
topic.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
join the board. The last thing I wanted to talk about from this episode was really the concept of pursuing the underdark, which I thought was a wonderful organic
Yeah.
thing that came out of a weird question that was about D&D was what is your underdark? The dark, scary place that you need to go in order to grow or go on an adventure. So I called it the metaphorical call to adventure. You set up and made the Underdark into this place that was really real. And she had a great answer around, again, it wasn't, she doesn't want to live with regret. She wants to look back on her life and say, yeah, I did that. I had this idea. I could have been one of those people who stayed inside and was scared of my Underdark, which was
Mm.
going out there to, launch this business. But I decided to be brave, go after it. And even though I didn't know everything, even though I didn't know exactly how it was going to work out, I went after it and braved the Underdark. And what an adventure it's really been.
Yeah, she really did just leap into that discussion so well. What is your Underdark, Chris?
I think there's a lot of Underdark out there to conquer, but I believe that part of it is getting out there to ask more. I honestly offering services or wisdom or any of these things that we talk about for money. I think that there's a part of me that's scared about going after that. And two, I think that there's a part of me that's freaked out about performing live when it comes to music or all those kind of things. There's some things that I know I've overcome in the past, so I can do it. But there's a dark place of like scarydom around what it means to step into even more of the public view or even more of the to have more people want what I am providing or we're providing or what we're about to launch. That is a scary thing because what happens when, say, everybody does know who you are in a certain niche? Or what if a bunch of people are listening? Now your words have much more impact and there's ripples. And some people are going to dislike what you say. And then you're going to be noticed a lot more. And you're going to get lots of positive things, but you're also going to get more negative things. More money, more problems, right? There's no such thing as like, well, I got the easy road and this road, it's only good things. There's no challenges on this road. There's no bumps. There's no hills. There's no rocks. That's a mythical road that doesn't exist. There's no such thing as the golden road to the Emerald City here. And even that road had problems. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of challenges that are going to happen as you go down whatever road. And so for me, the Underdark is all those things, those fears around, as you get into more of the public view, as we put more out there that's authentic, as we put more out there that is really how we feel, how are people going to react? And are they willing to purchase? Are they willing to take that extra step to actually say this is worth my money to support something like this, what we're doing, or music like I'm making, or any other business that I'm launching? That's the Underdark.
Yeah, there's so much of that I was feeling similarly and that I would echo, which is just the road to success. I mean, the Underdark is what is success going to be for me, and what will that look like? Where will success, where will respect, where will not respect, reputation, where will that be for me? And having to go into this unknown realm is ultimately going to get me there. And I think that is something that a lot of nerdpreneurs would resonate with,
Yeah.
and how we get there.
Well, I think we can keep them informed of how it's going as we continue to do these Talking Nerdies in the future and continue to talk about our pursuit of our own Underdark with this Nerdpreneur podcast and all the associated products and things and launches that we might come up with in the next year, because it's only just kicking off 2023 and I got a good feeling about this year and where we're going.
I agree. So, for all the nerdpreneurs out there, if you want to support us on our journey to the Underdark, make sure to please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on social media on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Nerdpreneur Pod, Nerdpreneur Podcast.
And if you got anything out of this episode that you thought was awesome or you just heard a cool idea, share it with a friend. Tell somebody else to check it out, because that's really the only way we grow is through amazing listeners like you that enjoy what we say and think it will help other people. So we're giving this stuff away.
Hell yeah. Keep it nerdy.
Talking nerdy.
If you want to buy yourself some fairy wings, make sure you go to creatureswhocraft.com.
Yeah, and if you want to engage with her on social media, she's most active on Instagram at Pimentel, Pimentel.